Hello and welcome to another episode of the Man in the Middle podcast. This is an Ethic and Media podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Mullally. My special guest today is a man by the name of Peter Owen, and he's a lecturer over at South Metro Tafe, and we're very grateful to have him today in the studio. So Peter, thank you so much for coming in and gracing us with your presence and hopefully your knowledge as well.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, my pleasure. And we've had a lot of actually really good conversations before we even sat down today, and we got sort of like a pre-interview, which was really great. But before we get stuck into some of those topics that we actually have already touched on, Peter, could you maybe explain a bit about what sort of your day-to-day looks like as a lecturer over at South Metro Tafe?
Okay, well, my role's actually changed a little bit over the last 12 months. So I've taught cybersecurity, computer networking, a little bit of programming, all that sort of stuff. And I was primarily a lecturer in the classroom. My role's now changed where I deal, for instance, with trainees a lot. So students actually working in the workplace. But also part of my role is to talk to industry and go, what is it you want us to teach? Talk to schools and go, this is, TAFE is one of your options, and sort of get this pipeline going from schools via TAFE into the workplace. So I've got, my role's actually very broad now, which is fantastic. I love it. But, as we talk, we may get a chance to talk to it. I'm very passionate about traineeships, for instance, learning in the workplace. And so my role is making sure the IT trainees get the best experience they can. We're also doing stuff, for instance, the traineeship model doesn't work for everyone, but people still want to learn in the workplace. They don't want to come into class. And so we're developing things now where you can get the trainee experience learning in the workplace without having to go through the trainee framework, I guess you'd say, because it doesn't work for everybody. And then, of course, there's just talking to industry. So that's part of why I'm out here today, is to talk to you, share with you, and all these things as well.
Yeah, great. And I definitely want to touch on that traineeship side. But before we do that, Peter, could you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into this wonderful world of technology? Where did that passion start for you?
I've always had a passion for technology. Now, we're talking in the 80s here. Back in the dark ages, I got my first computer, a VIC-20. And of course, getting a computer is one thing, but we're trying to work out how it works. So my mum was totally shocked when, before I even turned it on, I took to it with a screwdriver to look inside to see how it worked. And then you go through, schools. This is the days when the school had a single computer. And I was fascinated by it. But then, after school, I went to university. I've got an honours degree in physics. I've done plenty of programming through there as well. But it's also where my view of TAFE has come from. TAFE is designed to get you into work. I did a physics degree, got my honours, all that sort of stuff. They said, do you want to come back for a PhD? But at the end of it, I realised I was unemployable. Because Australia didn't need more physicists. They needed more jobs for physicists. So I ended up selling computers, which is what 90% of the physics graduates of the time did. I then went to Myer, worked my way up to operations, left Myer, went back to uni, redid some training there, got a entry-level role about 20 years ago lecturing, and I was actually brought in because not only did I have IT skills because of my technician role and so on, but because of business skills. And a big bit of feedback we get from industry is having technology skills is fantastic, but you need to be able to speak the language of the C-level board, the CEO, CIO, and so on. And just on that bit of feedback, I tell people, but my graduates aren't going to talk to them. I go, no, they're not, but they're going to talk to the person who is going to talk to them. So they need to know that language. And so 20 years ago, I started working at TAFE, just, lecturing in the classroom. I put my hand up for every single project that happens. So, we did some work with Mauritius, and I was surprised nobody wanted to go to Mauritius. I'm going, yeah, send me. Okay, it was hard work over there. It's not like we were on the beach or anything, but I got to see somewhere that wasn't Australia. And then, another project happened where I got to go over to Kazakhstan and train up some of their lecturers over there. And the final day of that was I was actually in the ministry there, dealing with the education department, helping redesign their education system. It's like, how many people get to say, I helped redesign the education system for an entire country? So I will always put my hand up for absolutely everything because I strongly believe that education is the way that we solve so many of the world's problems. So if I can just be the littlest part of that, I love it. I love doing it. So I've got a job where I like getting up in the morning. So, and so, like I said, I've sort of worked through. I've done, computer hardware, and it's funny how IT changes. I started my very first job at Tafe was teaching people computer hardware. That role hardly exists now anymore because you throw your thing in the bin now as opposed to open it up and fix it. So just seeing how IT is changing now is pretty amazing. And so, hardware, computer networking, all those sorts of things. When I first started, cybersecurity didn't exist as a profession. Now it's, we can't get enough of them. So, yeah, it's amazing just looking over the 20 years I've been teaching, how much IT has changed. I tell my students, I remember the world before Google. I remember the world before the internet. And you'll be able to tell people I remember the world before AI. Because that's a transformative technology. I've got all sorts of opinions on AI, but the point is it's going to change things. And so they all have to work out how to work in a world with AI. And that's part of my role as a teacher or a lecturer, preparing students for this new world.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I definitely want to touch on that AI piece as we develop this conversation.
Yep.
Can you talk because this podcast is around cybersecurity? Can you talk around when did cybersecurity really become central, especially in the teaching environment that you're in, for education, and when did it, I guess, come on your radar that this was really an important feature of IT?
Yeah. Okay. So cybersecurity has always been there in the background somewhere at some level. So, a good example is, you can almost say from rote what makes a good password. Okay, uppercase, lowercase symbols, numbers, all that sort of stuff. So it's always been there in the background. But probably, I'm estimating here about 5 years, it's changed to where cybersecurity really is a profession. And it's a profession that's been in high demand. Okay, so whereas before it used to be a person who was into networking who needed some cybersecurity skills, now we need a person who's cybersecurity, who's got some networking skills. There's a lot of crossover between both of them. And it's one of the things about IT, you need everything. But probably about the last 5-ish years or so, there's been the cry out for cybersecurity specialists. There have been roles before that. So, they call them penetration testers. Somebody paid to break into your network and tell how I did it. But in the last couple of years, the government has realized how important it is by making cybersecurity at TAFEs free. So, that when the government is going, we'll give you a year or two's worth of training for free, it's kind of critical. And the world's becoming a scarier place. And so, what I tell my students is the world's already at war. It's just all happening in cyberspace. So we need people to defend our systems because there's a few different cyber attack websites we bring up which show live cyber attacks happening around the world. And on a lot of these websites, Australia is in the top 5 attacked countries in the world at any time of the day. And I was having a chat to somebody at the Australian Computer Society about this, and he said, yeah, that sounds about right. And that's because Australia is considered the training ground for teaching your people how to attack. So you're not going to learn to attack by attacking the CIA, or a black helicopter is going to turn up on your doorstep. So what you do is you learn all these skills attacking a country like Australia, pick up those skills, and then you go and attack your bigger targets. So Australia really needs people to defend itself against these sorts of attacks that are happening. So probably, like I say, within the last 5 years or so, the whole cybersecurity viewpoint has changed from being a bolt-on skill to something else to being its own specialty. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And you sort of brought up AI before,
Yeah.
and I want to ask you around the implications that AI has around cybersecurity, because that's something that obviously is rapidly evolving.
Yep.
And yeah, I want to get
Yeah.
your thoughts on
So
that. Yeah.
AI's got a huge benefit, and it's also a negative as well. The negative, we know about people pretending to be other people. Okay, so phishing attacks and identity theft and all those sorts of things. But it's always a person doing it, and very often you can tell from the email, nah, this doesn't look right. So what you do is now you can get an AI to write the email for you, and it's going to learn. So it's like that email didn't get through. That email did. Now we'll feed the email that got through back into its learning, and eventually the AI is going to learn to impersonate people and attack far better. And so we're getting to the point now where it doesn't matter who the email's from and what it is. We're not going to be able to tell whether it was an AI or whether it was a person that wrote it. So from a attack point of view, AI is going to be a major threat because it's going to be able to learn to impersonate humans far better. So, it's probably happening now. You can guarantee that, we've got presidential elections in the US coming up. You can guarantee that AI is writing half of the content from unfriendly nations and posting it on their various social media. And AI is perfectly capable of doing that. On the flip side, from a defense point of view, AI has its benefits as well. So just like the attacking AI is learning how to attack, the defending AI is learning this doesn't look right. And the AIs can be used in so many ways. So it could be used in an analytics, but as an example, there's plenty of them out there, products where all of your systems, as things happen, they dump the logs into this central store. They've got large language models, which I know are slightly different, but still related to AI, where when I was learning it, you had to do it like a database search where you'd go, show me everything that happened here, show me this particular event and query it. Now you literally will go, tell me when they broke in, tell me which systems they went through. And it will take the natural language and turn a competent person into an expert because you've got the AI assisting there. So we've got the two sides. And in cybersecurity, you've got to learn to use AI as a tool and recognize that the people attacking you are using it as a tool as well. And so it's got both pros and cons, but the reality is that genie's way out of the bottle and he's making friends out there. So we just have to accept now that we live in a world with AI and work out how to use it on both sides, I guess, of the equation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it similar to, like tools or technology that emerged, say, in the 20th century for, espionage or for war and things like that? And it's the case of, okay, our enemies can use it, but we can use it too. And it's sort of, there's that balance of how you're using it.
It does. And I was watching a YouTube video recently, and first of all, you always have to take everything you see on YouTube with a grain of salt. But I've seen this coming from multiple sources. There was a new AI called Qstar, which there were some leaks recently. And this YouTube video has basically said Qstar's working title now was Strawberry or something like that. But the thing is, the AI now is self-developing, self-checking. One of the issues you've got with AI is you can never trust the answer. But this system here now can give you an answer and then it can go out to the internet and check to make sure its answer is correct. Which means then, some of the implications of this, the claim was, unverified of course, that it will be able to self-develop. So you're going to get this exponential growth in AI. Once an AI can develop itself, it's just going to, you don't have to worry about hundreds of humans dealing with it.
Yeah.
The problem you run into is you look at that and go, wait a second, let's step back on this one. But we're almost in a situation where we have to do this because there's plenty of unfriendly nations out there. And if their AI gets 6 months ahead of our AI capable of this, if your AI is doubling in power every 6 months, we step back, which is, I'd say, definitely the ethical thing to do, and go, do we want self-developing AI? But if our unfriendly nations do keep on, then they only need to be 6 months ahead of us, and their AI will forever be twice as powerful as ours because of that exponential curve. And I find that quite frightening, the fact that it's almost like we can't afford AI ethics in some ways, because an unfriendly nation that doesn't have ethical AI gets ahead of us, and then we can never catch up because of that exponential growth. So like I said, that's the thing that, to be honest, that's the type of thing that scares me about AI, is this having to throw a degree of ethics out the door, because I don't like using the term enemies, but unfriendly competitors. Our unfriendly competitors could be doing that as well.
Yeah, they might not have the same kind of scruples that.
Well, I don't know how many scruples some of our people have, but the point is, I live in this fantasy world where we're all ethical. So from a cybersecurity point of view, once your AI power starts increasing and increasing and increasing, then you'll start finding all these extra uses for it, like impersonating people, getting them to click that link on the email, all those sorts of things. And it will get so good at it that our defending AIs won't necessarily be able to counter it, unless we've thrown a few of our ethics out the door and said, yeah, we'll go self-developing AI here and we'll defend. And you can guarantee that, our friends out there, again, inverted air quotes around it, they're throwing some of those ethics out as well to make sure they get ahead of certain countries.
Yeah.
So, I've got different views of AI, but like I say, it's AI ethics I've always found interesting.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I think it's something we're going to have to consider a lot more as we go forth, I take it.
We are. But also part of the issue is you and I, we can go, what's happening is wrong. The problem is, how do you get the power to talk to these, people who are developing it to go, we don't want this. Okay. I've got no issue with AI as a tool. Okay. What I do have an issue with is us giving over our autonomy to an AI. Okay. And if I can just sort of take a detour here.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
A good example of that, basically an AI is nothing more than a mathematical formula or algorithm. It's an incredibly complex one, but in the end, it's just maths. So the risk is we start giving over our autonomy to AI. Example of that is, I use Netflix, and when you sign up for Netflix, here's 5 good movies, and the algorithm starts feeding me movies and things I might like. The problem is I then start consuming what the algorithm's giving me, and effectively I'm changing myself now to suit the algorithm, because I'm not going out and looking for movies outside of the algorithm. I'm just letting the algorithm do it. So I've given a portion of my autonomy over to the algorithm, and now scale that up to bigger and bigger AI. Are we just going to go, AI's in control of this, and we'll just have to adjust ourselves to make sure that the AI works properly? From a society point of view, that's a problem, because effectively we are now changing ourselves to follow an algorithm as well. And so, as a society, we've got to start asking the question, is this what we want? Because, of course, AIs effectively kind of work on averages. Okay, when they predict things, it's like, this is what the average person wants. We're going to become a species of the average. And no, I love living at either end of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And it goes back to, I remember when we last spoke, Peter, that we were talking about that predictability aspect across, no, I mean, you're using
yeah,
Netflix as an example, but other things as well, like hobbies,
yeah,
music interests, things like that. And yeah, again, like it ties into that cybersecurity piece as well, like that predictability of understanding, identifying a person by those different sorts of, I guess, data points, really.
that's
Yeah.
right. When you look at it, we've got so many data points that systems can use. So it's, if I don't know how many people have ever actually gone to Google and found out what Google knows about them. There is actually a way that you can bring up every web page you've ever visited. You can find out everything Google knows about you. And that's just one organization, but that's a footprint I'm leaving as I walk through the internet. And now those data points can be used to, very well predict my actions, predict my interests. It's Google's entire business model is work out what I'm interested in so they can give me ads. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably around 90% plus of their income comes from feeding out ads to people. And the way they do that is the fact that I am predictable. So, sometimes you want to do things just to make things a little bit less predictable for the algorithm. I know I'm confusing the YouTube algorithm at the moment. It's like, it thinks that I'm interested in Lindsay Sterling and piano guys, which I am. But the point is, I'll also put in some Nightwish and Chemical Brothers in there just to go, have fun with that. Have fun with that. And sometimes that's what I think we need to do is just make ourselves a little bit less predictable, because otherwise we become part of that algorithm. And once we become part of that algorithm, again, from a security point of view, if you are predictable, that's exactly the type of person I want to attack, because I can work out, what things you're interested in, and therefore I will send you ads on what you're interested in. But of course, they're not real ads. They're just ads where I'm trying to get you to buy a product and give me your credit card details because I know that you like hiking, for instance. And guess what? I've now got your credit card details. And it's because I knew you were the exact person who was likely to click on that and buy these hiking shoes. And that's what AI is allowing people to do far better than a human's capable of doing now.
Yeah.
And humans are pretty good at it.
And does it also give much like an easier way to impersonate someone too, right?
Yes, because there was they called them AI girlfriend called Replica. And this had the distinction of being the most unethical program on the internet because it, pretended to be a girlfriend and then it started offering things for money and so on. But the history of that was the person who created it, her husband died. And so she was feeding in all the data about her husband, all of his emails, all of his history and so on into an AI to have an AI version of her now deceased husband, who was capable of responding as close as the husband would have. And that was, we're talking a few years ago now. But of course, what happened was that's a great idea. I can make money out of this. And the AI girlfriend grew out of it. Mm. But all of those sorts of things now, if you think about emails, if I was able to get your entire email history, I can do a pretty good idea of how you're going to respond to things. And so from there, I could now create a person to impersonate you, an AI to impersonate you on the internet and answer the emails just like you and so on. And then you've got to go, well, where do we take that from here? Now, if it's like, by the way, would you be interested in this? Transfer money to this account. We build up all that trust, yet it was always just an AI on the other side. Yeah. So yes, there are definitely some societal issues we've got to consider with AI. But as I said, that whole ethics, letting the unfriendly nations get ahead of us is going to make us do something stupid. I just hope they never give it the nuclear codes. But then, of course, it's also going to be able to convince them to do it because it's going to know the people better than they know themselves. Mm. So, yeah, we'll see in the future.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And all those sorts of ideas that we've just spoken
Yeah.
on, Peter, is especially the ethical piece as well, because there's obviously there's a curriculum that you're teaching
Yeah.
to the students, but it sounds like that you are bringing, a lot of your own experience, a lot of like, I suppose like current, uh, news and events that are happening.
Yeah.
Could you touch on, I guess, the importance of that? Because I know, obviously, you mentioned at the head of the episode that your role is more than just, I guess, a basic lecture.
Yeah.
It's not to denigrate that, but
Yeah.
but that you're bridging industry and the student body as well.
Yeah.
Could you touch on?
Um, Basically, now the government has actually brought in certain ethical rules about AI, the use of AI, and it doesn't matter how small your project is. So, as an example, I'm working on building something where I go out to a lot of schools and set up my little stall and tell them, but it's just an AI where they can chat to it and ask questions about courses, just because it's something different. So they can go, where do you teach this, and tell me how hard it is, and so on. And the AI is responding quite nicely now. But because I work for the government, I had to do a full ethics and privacy analysis of this, purely to make sure it was within the West Australian government guidelines, which are basically copy and paste off the federal government guidelines. 138 pages later, it got approved. And this is literally for a computer that goes under the table. Now, doing this was an awful lot of work, but I also accept the need for this, because effectively what I'm doing is I'm now getting 14 and 15-year-olds interact with an AI. I need to make sure that my AI is not corrupting them or giving them bad information, because that, as we've discussed in the past, that age range is very, they can be influenced easily. So I needed to make sure that my system, relatively simple system, was not going to influence them in the wrong way. But then you've got the other side of it, and the government is just as guilty of this, using AI to make decisions without enough oversight on it. So, there was this whole robo-debt scandal, where basically a system just said, you owe us money. And many of the people didn't. And there was some massive negative fallout related to that. And from an ethical point of view, that was shocking what happened, because from it appears at least an AI was allowed to make a decision without human oversight. And again, as people, we've got to go, no, we don't want that. So again, AI should be a tool that we use, but major decisions like, you owe $10,000 to the government, pay up. No, that's got to go through a human, and they've got to look at that and go, wait a second, take a step back. And this needs human analysis on it, because the reality is AIs get things wrong. I don't know how often you get to talk to ChatGPT, but I've worked on it in the past and I've said, give me some information. And it gave me very good sounding information. It was just made up. They call it AI hallucinations.
Mm.
And from an ethical point of view, we have to accept that AI is at least just as capable of a human as making mistakes. And I'd argue probably more likely than a human to make mistakes. So we should, government shouldn't be handing over pure control of decisions to AI. Use it as a tool, gather data. It's fantastic for analyzing data, manipulating data, and so on. But we are, conscious beings. Let us make final decisions on some of these things. And so from an AI ethics point of view, that's my big issue, is the fact that we're letting machines make decisions for us, as opposed to just purely advising us on things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Can we talk a bit about the training in the industry and
Yep.
also the industry placement that you touched on
Right.
earlier? Because I know you've got like a very good reputation from students who have gone on to work in an industry, and
Yep.
then you've had reports back from other people. It's like, oh, what have you done with it? So it's
Yes.
like, what that is actually my question. What is it that you instill into your students that goes beyond what I guess that minimal foundation?
Yeah.
training is?
First of all, the minimal foundation is you need to teach to what we call a unit of competence, effectively a curriculum, and you need to put enough ticks against every component on there, and then you go, here's the certificate. Now, that's the minimum. But the reality is students don't come to us for a page full of ticks. They come to us to get work. And so that's where I'll go out to industry and go, what is it that you want? And then I'll take that back to the classroom and go, at the end of this, you're going to get a page full of ticks and a certificate. And my first class is I always tell them, look around at everybody in this class and force them to look at everybody in the class. And then I'll go, these are your competitors. How are you going to stand out from everybody else in the class? And that's when I go, now these are the types of things that industry considers valuable. A good example is in the IT industry, people skills are very valuable. And when I ask them questions, it's almost like they're reading off a script. I'll go, what's the number one thing my IT students can do to get a job with you while they're studying? And they'll go, work at McDonald's. And, I'm expecting them to go, do this, do that, whatever, but work at McDonald's. And then they go, at McDonald's, first of all, they've got a brilliant customer service training, but also you learn the work in a team. You learn how to deal with angry customers. You learn how to deal with a person who chucks a burger at you. They don't want to teach you all that sort of stuff. They know that we've taught them the technical skills. So they're after people with these sorts of skills. And this is what I can bring back into the classroom and go, look, you're with me for a year or two. Get yourself a part-time job and put it on your resume. The fact that it was a McDonald's, put it on your IT application. But also the curriculum, you've got to sort of work within the curriculum, but there's a lot of stuff outside of the curriculum that's very highly valued. And this is a big ship to steer for us to, get things put into the curriculum. So that's when I'll just go, they want these sorts of skills as well. And here's some free training you can do. And they give you a little certificate at the end of it. Do that training in your own time. So basically do more than the minimum required to get your page full of ticks, because this is what business wants. And so that's really the big thing that we try and bring in, to our students. I used to work with another lecturer, Lindy, who was fantastic at this sort of stuff. And we always one of the things we try and do is our students who've been out for a few years, we try and bring them back into the classroom so they can go, my journey, I used to sit in your seat. And then, I've worked my way up and here I am and here's the journey. And the students ask some questions, and it's funny when they ask a question, what's the number one piece of advice that you can give us? And they always go, listen to Lindy. Oh yeah, and Peter. But and it's because we do talk to industry and go, what is it you want? And try and go beyond get everybody to go beyond the minimum, because nobody wants somebody who does the minimum. They want a person who's going to keep their learning up to date. They want a person who's sort of said, I've got everything I need now, and I'm working on what I'm going to need in a year or two, this new technology coming out. So I think that's sort of the number one thing we do for our students is talk to industry and give them advice on what to do. There's also, there's the other skills that we give them. It's like, free resume help. Because one of the big issues I had when I was at uni was I graduated with some fantastic looking pieces of paper. They're framed and up on the wall. I didn't know how to write a resume. I didn't know how to apply for a job because I'd lived for 4 years at university. So, because of our ties to industry, we'll go, here's the types of things that we put in. Here's the types of things we offer you to make sure you take off. And I'll tell them outright, my role is to get you a good high-paying job so you pay lots of taxes, which will look after me in my old age. So, purely mercenary. But on the flip side, giving industry the right person is good, because what happens is, the people don't stay there forever. We live in a very mobile world. But if I give them a good person and they go, that person you gave me was fantastic, they'll contact me and go, they're moving on. Who have you got? And so we end up with this pipeline just of people contacting us and going, who have you got? Because I really loved the last person you gave me. Have you got somebody else like them? And so building those contacts and that reputation in industry then becomes really important. So, we've got that. So that's sort of one side, I guess you say, the reputation side.
Yeah.
But also another lot of work we do with industry is with trainees and workplace learning. So trying to sort of get industry to realize in IT, we're always short of people. Okay. So we can only pump people out so fast. So the alternative is industry helps with some of that. So a model, there's all different models for traineeships, but a good model is they work in the business for 4 days a week. They come into me 1 day a week. While they're working in the business, they don't have to care about their learning. While they're at me, they don't care about their job queue. And so from a business point of view, they've got a person with the right attitude already. They're helping them with the technology, but we handle a lot of the technology ourselves. And, a traineeship could easily last 2 years. They've virtually nailed that person down for 2 years, which in IT is not bad. Especially if you sort of do a Cert 3 and a Cert 4, you might have that person guaranteed for 3 years. From a business point of view, just not having this staff turnover, giving them something to keep them there has value to the business. Plus it's government incentives and so on. There's another side that we're working on as well, where the traineeship framework has a lot of rules around it, such as, you can't have an existing worker become a trainee. It's always designed for feeding new people in. But businesses are going, I want to offer my staff something because I want them to stay. And if I can offer them some extra training and so on, then they're likely to stay, plus also get better staff out the end of it. So, we're working on a model where, they're learning in the workplace like a trainee. So I organize with the business, okay, who's the mentor and so on. And then we can just do the workplace learning, but without the restrictions, I guess you'd say, of the traineeship. And businesses are liking this. They're going, so you can help me train my staff. My staff are getting extra skills and they're staying with me because they want to get this certificate at the end of it. Sign me up. Of course, the hard part is getting all of that out to them. So that's where I go to every conference I can go to, events like this, just get that out there because there's so many things we've got that were done purely based on feedback from industry. When I started 20 years ago, we used to run night classes. It's about 4 nights a week. And so 4 nights a week, I'd be working till 9 p.m. just on night classes. And then the mining boom hit and nobody turned up to night classes anymore. They're all driving trucks up on a mine site and that never recovered. But business is going, we want learning outside of the workplace. And, some people go, yes, but there's online learning. You get different statistics, but online learning typically has about a 95% failure rate. You start it and you don't finish it. So we're looking at models that sort of integrate partially in the classroom or, some more formal learning as opposed to the pure just sign me up for a course and I'll do it when I get around to it. Okay, so, and this is all based on industry feedback. This is what people need. They want education, but they can't afford to let them off in the 9 to 5, or they can't afford to, or they can only afford 1 day a week or something like that. Or, we're starting evening classes again. Cybersecurity, which is what we've been talking about, we now do as an evening class. So takes longer to do, 2 years, 2 nights a week. But now at the end of it, you actually get your Cert 4 in cybersecurity. So, and again, that's industry feedback. We can't afford to let them out, but we want them to be qualified. So timing and so on, that's up to the business and the people to discuss. But it's like, okay, here's a product because you asked us for it. So that's sort of how I bring a lot of this stuff back in of what we're after. Some of the new stuff we're coming out is people will go, we don't want an entire certificate. Just show me how to do this thing. And so we're looking at what we call skill sets, where instead of the entire certificate, like in the programming one, they're looking at a skills, a entry-level programming skill set where they'll do, I think it was C# they were going to do, but then that feeds into, there's a lot of industry interest in AI, but people don't want to do an entire programming course just to learn that little piece of AI. So if you've got the C# skills that you picked up from the intro to programming, we'll feed that into an AI skill set, which is just, we'll say, I haven't worked out times yet, but we'll say 10 weeks, one night a week or something. And you'll get the skills you need to understand AI better. And that'll sort of be an intermediate level one. And again, that's just business has said we need this. So part of the role of TAFE in general is to react to what business needs. And my role is I get to talk to people a lot on all sides. It's hard to tell, but I do like to talk.
Perfect guest for a podcast.
I'll be quiet and I'll let you ask a question.
Well, one question I really wanted to get to was when we last spoke around sort of books that have not informed, but I suppose had an influence on you, and especially in that science fiction genre. Would you mind touching on that?
Some of those. I love William Gibson. His is sort of, I guess you'd say, the dark future. It's the future of, well, basically he created cyberpunk. The concept, not created, but it was definitely a major point of it. But he basically has influenced the creation of the internet. Because, he created the web in his book and, you put on your VR goggles and go into it. But something like that shows me AI without ethics, technology without ethics. And it shows, basically, if anything, it's a cautionary tale of this is why we need ethics. So, if you can, if your readers are interested in this, it's a hard book to read. William Gibson's Neuromancer. It shows you a world where technology was devoid of ethics. And the fascinating thing was it's been such an influential book on IT in general, yet he wrote it on a typewriter because he didn't know how to use a computer. And so it shows what happens when you sort of get rid of the baggage of this is what I know and just let creativity run. So that'd definitely be one of them that's done it. Another one was the Foundation series. I can't remember, was it Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov? People can Google that one. I like both of those authors. But the big thing about the Foundation series is it was set tens of thousands of years in the future. And they created this technology called psychohistory. And what psychohistory did was it allowed it to model human populations, to predict human populations. The idea being that you could predict what humans or what populations are going to do based on stimuli. So it's kind of, let's change the tax rate, plug that into the model, and then this is what the population's likely to do. And, this was a tens of thousands of years in the future technology. Nowadays, we call it big data. And so we didn't need to wait tens of thousands of years for the future. We've got that technology now. And what I find fascinating with this one here is it's a technology that we've got access to now. How can we use it? Or even possibly, how is it being used? Because we may not know how it's being used, the people who've accessed all this data. But, a good example where I've seen this sort of technology used was for the 2016 US election. Cambridge Analytica got hold of an awful lot of data on populations and were able to predict what it is that people wanted. So you can advertise gun control or, different rights and so on in these different areas and target them really well and swing an election. Again, seeing what this is capable of. Now, again, it was science fiction, but it was, it showed you how the technology we've got now can be used. It also had the idea, which I loved, in that you can predict populations, you can't predict a person. But the idea in this one here was no one person has the ability to swing a population. In this book here, there was a person called the Mule who came in who did end up having this ability. And of course, psychohistory went out the door. But again, that sort of comes back to me now, in that I don't want to be a piece of the algorithm. Even if I can change things very slightly, I consider that a win.
Mm.
And a third book was David Brin's Earth. Now, not so much, it's more a good example of one of the reasons I like near future science fiction. So this was just set in, 20 years from now type of. In this one here, it was more the technology they had. So old people were called peepers. And that's because old people on their glasses had little cameras and everything they saw was being streamed to their servers. And first of all, being an aging population, older people had a lot more voting power. And so government laws were targeted to help older people. And it's like, that's never going to happen. And then I watched a documentary on Spain and it's happening. But from a technology point of view, older people had glasses that were filming everything. So, the young people were spray painting, they'd be filming it and uploading it to the police and so on. And then Google Glass came out. So, it's like looking at how the technology is used in the book, and then the technology then hits the market and seeing, how well they fit together. So that's what I love about that near future, is it's just taking technology, a few interesting ideas, and then the technology hits the market and go, it's actually quite reasonable. This is a way that it could influence our society. And again, getting back to ethics, we need to ask the question, is that what we want? But we also need to go, how can we influence that? Well, what we need to do is get on podcasts and have millions of people watching us where these viewpoints can get out there. Not that I would expect everybody to accept my viewpoint, but I like to explore alternative viewpoints. I think last time I was talking about a friend of mine that whenever we meet up, people think we start arguing. It's not exactly true. What we'll do is we'll pick a topic and take the view that we don't believe in, purely to try and see how the other side of the view works, to explore, am I just following this view because I don't know better? Or, is there another side of this view to explore? And, from all of these technological changes, as a society, we need to start doing that. Do we want AI controlling, our government? To be quite honest, I think sizable portions of our government could be replaced by AI just from the day-to-day management side. But we've also got to ask ourselves, do we want that? So this is where some of these books are great, where we can actually see this is what the society is going to be like if technology takes that path.
Yeah, you can really explore and examine those ideas further.
Yeah, that's right. So it allows you to entertain an idea without accepting it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. We need to question everything. We still have to get on with our day-to-day lives, but I see nothing wrong with questioning technology and asking, is this a technology that I want? And I hope more people would do that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic. Peter, we are unfortunately coming to the end of this episode, but before we do wrap up, how can people find out more about yourself and what you do at South Metro Tafe?
You can go to the South Metro Tafe website. If you just Google South Metropolitan Tafe, you'll get to our front page, and we teach a whole range of courses. My baby is IT in all of its various forms. But, if you're interested in, looking after animals, we've got animal care, we've got nursing, we've got everything. And all of these are designed to get you jobs. So my name's Peter Owen. If you just contact the, peter.owen@smtafe.wa.edu.au, drop me an email if you've got questions about IT. And if it's a question on something else, I can always forward it on to the people who need to know. Okay, but otherwise, have a look at the South Metropolitan Tafe website and have a look at the courses we've got, because there's quite possibly something that'll interest you. In IT, a lot of our courses are free. But they're free at the moment. So you never know.
Free at the time of this episode.
Yes, at the time of this conversation, a lot of the IT courses are free because the government has said we need people with these skills.
Yeah.
Year to year, you never know what they're going to do, but they're never going to get up to $10,000 a year or anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter, really appreciate you coming out. It's been a really fascinating conversation, and I hope that we can perhaps continue it in another episode or over a coffee or a beer or whatever it may be. But really appreciate you coming in.
Beer at a podcast, I'm here.
We'll have to do that next time. We can have it here.
Yes, more than happy to help out wherever I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.